The council chamber floated in the darkness of space like a jewel made of glass and metal. Inside, representatives from 40 different species sat in their designated seats, each one designed for their unique bodies. Some breathed oxygen, others methane, and some did not breathe at all. They had gathered here for 200 years to discuss the fate of the galaxy, to make decisions that affected trillions of lives across thousands of worlds. Ambassador walked through the tall doors with measured steps. Her black uniform carried no decorations, no medals, though she had earned more than most soldiers ever would. Behind her walked 6 other humans, all silent, all wearing the same plain uniform. The chamber fell quiet as they approached the center platform. This was unusual. Humans rarely brought their full delegation to routine reports. The chairman, a being called whose body resembled a cluster of floating crystals that hummed with inner light, spoke first. His voice came through translators as a pleasant chime. "Ambassador, welcome. We understand you have completed your mission against the Void Swarm. The Council extends its gratitude for humanity's service." Stopped at the platform's edge. She did not bow, she did not smile. "The Void Swarm has been eliminated," she said. Her voice was flat, empty of emotion. "The war lasted 6 years. 70 million human soldiers are dead. 12 of our colony worlds were burned to ash. 400 billion civilians were evacuated. The economic cost will take us 3 generations to recover from." A ripple of movement went through the chamber. Some species made sounds of sympathy. Others remained silent, chimed again. "Your sacrifice will be remembered. Humanity has once again proven itself the finest military force in the galaxy. Your compensation will be processed according to our standard agreements." "Compensation," repeated the word slowly, as if tasting something bitter. "Yes, the standard rate, the same rate you pay for garbage collection and asteroid mining." The chamber grew colder. Crystals dimmed slightly. "Ambassador, your tone suggests dissatisfaction. If you wish to negotiate better terms for future contracts." "There will be no future contracts," interrupted. This was unheard of. No one interrupted the chairman. "I am here to deliver Earth's final report and our final decision." A representative from the chitter species, and being with 6 arms and compound eyes, clicked forward. "Final decision. Ambassador, you cannot simply." "We can," said, "and we have. For 200 years, humanity has served this council. We have fought 17 major wars and countless smaller conflicts. We have lost billions of our people defending species who refuse to fight for themselves. We have maintained your infrastructure, trained your technicians, mediated your disputes, and solved your problems." She pulled a data chip from her pocket and placed it on the platform. "This contains every contract, every agreement, every promise made between Earth and the Galactic Council. Our legal experts have reviewed them all. We have fulfilled our obligations, every single one. As of today, humanity withdraws from all future agreements." The chamber erupted. Voices shouted in a dozen languages, translators struggling to keep up. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. "You cannot abandon your responsibilities. The mining rebellion in the outer reaches requires immediate military intervention. We have already drafted the deployment orders for human forces." Looked at him with eyes that held no warmth. "The mining rebellion exists because you treat miners as slaves. They work in conditions that would kill them within 10 years, and you pay them barely enough to survive. They are not rebels. They are people demanding basic dignity. Send your own soldiers to shoot them if you wish. We will not." And Delegate, a being made of gas contained in a force field, spoke with a voice like wind. "This is emotional reasoning. Humanity has always been compensated fairly for its services." "Fairly?" Voice rose for the first time. "You want to discuss fair? When the Void Swarm attacked your worlds, where were your fleets? When our children died by the millions, which of you sent soldiers to fight beside them? You sent thoughts and prayers. You sent gifts and medals. You sent everything except help." She gestured to her delegation. Each person standing with me lost family in that war. Commander lost his daughter. She was 19. Doctor lost her husband and both sons. Specialist Minu lost everyone. His entire family was on Colony World 7 when it burned. The named humans stood still as statues, their faces showing nothing. But their eyes told a different story. Tried a different approach. We understand your grief truly, but consider the larger picture. Without human protection, the galaxy will fall into chaos. Pirate raids will increase. Border conflicts will escalate. Species will war against each other without human mediators. You are the glue that holds civilization together. Then civilization should learn to hold itself together, replied. We are not your parents. We are not your protectors. We are a species that made the mistake of being good at violence and organization, and you have spent 2 centuries exploiting that mistake. A Lumen representative, another crystalline being, spoke up. If this is about money, we can increase compensation. If it is about recognition, we can offer humanity a permanent seat on the inner council. Name your price. Shook her head slowly. There is no price. You still do not understand. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification. As we speak, every human vessel in council space is beginning withdrawal procedures. Every human soldier, every engineer, every technician, every diplomat. Within 72 hours, there will not be a single human in council territory. You would condemn billions to death out of pride. Crystals flared bright red. The Dominion waits at the galaxy's edge. Only human fleets keep them contained. Without you, they will sweep through council space like a plague. Then you should have built your own fleets, said simply. You should have trained your own soldiers. You should have maintained your own infrastructure. You had 200 years to prepare for the possibility that we might one day say no. You chose to believe we never would. She picked up the data chip. This contains instructions for maintaining the systems humans built for you, training manuals, technical specifications, everything you need. Whether you use it or not is your decision. His voice turned cold. If you leave, you will be barred from council space. Your ships will be fired upon. Your traders will be arrested. Your colonies in our territory will be seized. We have no colonies in your territory anymore, said. We evacuated them yesterday, and we welcome you to try firing upon our ships. It will not end well for you. She turned to leave, her delegation following. At the door, she paused and looked back. You treated us as tools for 200 years, tools to be used when convenient and put away when not needed. Now the tool is leaving your shed. You will learn to work with your own hands or you will not work at all. Either way, it is no longer our concern. The doors closed behind them with a soft hiss. In the council chamber, silence fell like a shroud. It would be the last time the full council met. Within 3 months, everything would begin to fall apart. But in that moment, they still believed humanity would return. They believed this was a bluff, a negotiating tactic. They were wrong. Humanity's ships left council space exactly as promised. 72 hours later, there was not a single human to be found. No messages, no explanations, just silence, vast and complete. And in that silence, the price of 200 years of exploitation began to come due. 3 months passed since the humans left. To most species in the galaxy, it felt like a bad dream that would soon end. They expected messages, demands, some kind of communication. Instead, there was only silence. Human space had closed its borders completely. Every communication channel was shut down. Every trade route was blocked. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from the galaxy. The first real problem started in Chitter space. The species controlled 17 worlds, each one home to billions of their kind. They were proud of their numbers, proud of their vast cities that stretched across entire continents. But their defense systems had been designed and maintained by human engineers for the past 50 years. The Chitters understood the theory, but they had never actually operated the systems themselves. Why would they? Humans did that work. A small group of pirates, maybe 30 ships, approached the outer chitter world of Prime. It should have been simple. The defense grid should have detected them hours before arrival, calculated their trajectory, and eliminated the threat with automated weapons platforms. Instead, the grid did nothing. The warning came only when the pirates were already in orbit, and by then it was too late. The Chitter defense fleet scrambled to respond. 200 ships launched from the surface, their weapons charged and ready. But without human tactical coordinators, there was no organization. Ships collided with each other in their rush to engage. Communication channels became chaos as every captain shouted orders and no one listened. The pirates, experienced in fighting disorganized targets, picked apart the Chitter fleet piece by piece. Prime burned. 3 billion Chitters died in the first week. The survivors sent desperate messages to the Council, to their neighboring systems, to anyone who would listen. But help came slowly, too slowly. By the time reinforcements arrived, the pirates had taken everything of value and disappeared into deep space. On the crystalline cities of Lumen Prime, a different kind of disaster was unfolding. The Lumens lived in towers of living crystal that reached kilometers into the sky, beautiful structures that pulsed with inner light. These towers required constant energy, precise environmental controls, and complex maintenance. For generations, humans had managed these systems. The Lumens considered such work beneath them. They were artists, philosophers, scientists. Manual labor was for lesser species. The first tower went dark on a Tuesday morning. The Lumens inside panicked, their crystalline bodies unable to function properly without the specific frequency of light the tower provided. Engineers were called, but they did not know what to do. The manuals were written in human languages, and while the Lumens could read them, understanding the practical application was different from reading words on a screen. A former human maintenance chief watched the news from his apartment on Earth. He sat in a simple chair by the window, drinking tea while his wall display showed Lumen cities going dark one by one. His neighbor, an elderly woman named Sura, knocked on his door. "Are you watching this?" she asked, pointing at the display. Nodded. "I trained their people for 15 years, taught them everything I knew about maintaining those towers. You know what they did? They assigned their worst students to the classes, the ones who failed at art or philosophy. They treated my training sessions like punishment duty." "Do you feel bad for them?" Sura asked. Thought about that for a long moment. He remembered the long hours teaching Lumens who barely paid attention, who acted like his knowledge was worthless because it came from a human. He remembered being called a useful primitive, a talented monkey, always with a smile as if it was a compliment. "No," he finally said. "I feel bad for the ones who will die because their leaders were too proud to value practical knowledge. But the leaders themselves, they made their choice." By the end of the third month, 17 Lumen cities were without power. Millions of Lumens tried to evacuate to functioning cities, but the transportation systems were also failing. The automated trains required maintenance. The shuttle ports needed repairs. Every system that humans had kept running was breaking down, and the Lumens were discovering they did not know how to fix them. The Concordat, always the most diplomatic of the Council species, decided to take action. They prepared a delegation of their finest speakers, beings who had negotiated peace treaties and trade agreements for centuries. They were confident. Surely, this was just a matter of better communication. Humans were reasonable. Humans could be convinced. Their ships approached the edge of human space and sent greetings in every language they knew. They offered apologies for past misunderstandings. They offered new treaties with better terms. They offered respect, partnership, equality. Everything humans had asked for over the years, they were now willing to give. The response came quickly. A single message, audio only, no video. A young human woman's voice, calm and professional. "Human space is closed to all foreign vessels. Turn back now or you will be fired upon. This is your only warning." The delegation leader, an ancient being named, tried to explain. Please, we must speak with your leaders. The galaxy is in crisis. Species are dying. We need humanity's help." The response was the same message, repeated word for word. "Human space is closed to all foreign vessels. Turn back now, or you will be fired upon. This is your only warning." Believed it was a bluff. Humans were not cruel. They would not actually fire on a diplomatic vessel. He ordered his ships forward. 3 human warships appeared from nowhere, their weapons locked on target. They did not hail. They did not negotiate. They simply fired. The first shot went across the flagship's bow, close enough that their shields flickered. The second shot destroyed an escort ship completely. The message came again, but this time there was an edge of irritation in the woman's voice. "Turn back now." The turned back sent his report to what remained of the council. Humanity is serious. They are not negotiating. They are not listening. We must prepare for a galaxy without them. But how does one prepare for that? The council met in emergency session, but it was nothing like the organized meetings of the past. Without human mediators, the species argued constantly. Old grudges surfaced. Border disputes that had been settled for decades were reopened. The Chitters blamed the Lumans for not sending aid during the pirate attack. The Lumans blamed them for failing to convince humanity to return. In a space station above Prime, Ambassador Minu worked alongside other species trying to maintain basic council functions. He was one of the few humans who had not returned to Earth, having married a Luman woman 20 years ago. He watched the council fall apart with sad eyes. "They never understood," he told his wife one evening. "They thought we worked for them because we were paid. They did not understand that we worked for them because we believed in the idea of the council. We believed that different species could work together, could build something greater than themselves." His wife, her crystal body dim with stress, asked, "And now?" "Now they are learning that you cannot build a civilization on the backs of people you do not respect. You cannot create lasting peace by paying others to keep the peace for you. You cannot maintain systems you do not understand." As the 4th month began, the situation worsened. Pirates grew bolder, attacking targets they would never have dared approach when humans patrolled the space lanes. Criminal organizations filled the void left by human law enforcement. Black markets flourished. Weapons flowed freely to anyone with money. The council issued statements calling for calm. They created new regulations, new laws, new procedures. But without humans to enforce them, the regulations were just words. The laws were suggestions. The procedures were ignored. On Earth, the government received hundreds of messages every day. Pleas for help, offers of payment, promises of reform. Some messages were angry, accusing humanity of abandoning the galaxy. Others were desperate, describing the suffering and death that was spreading across council space. Every message was filed, categorized, and ignored. Earth's borders remained closed. Human fleets stayed in human space. The only official statement from Earth was brief and repeated endlessly. "Humanity has withdrawn from galactic affairs. Do not contact us again." Sat in his apartment watching another Lumen city go dark on the news. Sura joined him, bringing food they could share. They ate in silence, watching the galaxy fall apart in slow motion. Neither of them spoke about the millions dying. What was there to say? The council had been warned. Humanity had begged for change, for respect, for partnership instead of servitude. The council had refused. They had believed humanity would always be there, would always answer the call, would always sacrifice themselves for species that treated them as tools. Now they were learning the price of that belief. And the worst part, the part that kept awake at night, was knowing that this was just the beginning. The real predators had not yet arrived. 6 months after humanity went silent, they came. They had been waiting at the edge of the galaxy for a very long time, watching and planning. They were not like the council species. They did not value art or philosophy. They did not build beautiful cities or write poetry. They had one skill, perfected over thousands of years: war. They were efficient killers. Their ships were ugly and functional, designed for one purpose only. Their soldiers felt no mercy, no hesitation, no doubt. They saw other species as resources to be harvested or obstacles to be removed. For 200 years, only one thing had kept them contained at the galaxy's edge: human fleets. Now those fleets were gone. The first attack came without warning. 70 warships appeared in Chitter space near the colony of Vex Station. The Chitter Defense Forces had learned nothing from the pirate attack 3 months earlier. They scrambled their ships in the same chaotic manner, shouting orders over communication channels that were jammed by electronic warfare. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, Vex Station was a debris field and 4 billion Chitters were dead. They did not occupy the station. They did not take prisoners. They simply destroyed everything and moved to the next target. News of the attack reached the council within hours. Emergency meetings were called. Fleets were mobilized from every member species. The largest military force the council had ever assembled on their own began moving toward space. 2,000 ships from a dozen different species, all united against a common enemy. It was not enough. Not even close. The Council fleet met at the border of the neutral zone. The battle began with the Lumans firing their powerful energy weapons, brilliant beams of light that could cut through starship hulls like paper. Under normal circumstances, these weapons were devastating. But the Luman targeting systems, designed and maintained by humans, were failing. Half their shots missed completely. The other half hit their own allies as often as the enemy. The Chitter swarm tactics should have overwhelmed them through sheer numbers. But swarm tactics require coordination, require someone to direct the swarm, to turn chaos into strategy. The Chitters had always relied on human tactical officers for that role. Without them, the swarm was just a mob. They tore through them like wolves through sheep. They tried to use their advanced sensors to track movements, to predict their strategy. But the sensors were giving contradictory readings. The maintenance logs showed that humans had performed calibration every month. They had not realized calibration was necessary. They thought the sensors just worked forever. The Council fleet was destroyed in 18 hours. Of the 2,000 ships that entered battle, fewer than 300 escaped. The lost 40 ships. It was not a battle, it was a slaughter. Commander stood on the observation deck of an orbital station above Sol, watching the news with other retired human officers. The images coming from the battle were horrific. Ships breaking apart, escape pods being targeted and destroyed, entire crews dying in the cold void of space. One of the officers, a young woman named, turned away from the screen. "We should help them," she said quietly. "Whatever they did to us, they do not deserve this." Looked at her with tired eyes. He was 60 years old and had spent 40 of those years fighting wars for the Council. "Do you remember the Void Swarm War?" he asked. "I was there," replied. "I lost friends." "I lost my daughter," said. "Was 19 years old. She was smart, funny, and she wanted to be a teacher. She joined the Defense Force because the Council needed soldiers. She died on the second day of the battle for Colony World 9. Do you know what the Council sent me?" Shook her head. "Flowers," said. "A beautiful arrangement with a card that said, 'We honor her sacrifice.' The card was printed, not even handwritten. One of 10 million identical cards sent to families like mine. And after the war, when I asked the Chitter representative if they would help rebuild our colony worlds, do you know what he said?" "What?" asked. "He said rebuilding was not in the contract. He said humanity was compensated for military service, not reconstruction. He said it with a smile, as if he was being reasonable." Turned back to the screen, where more Council ships were dying. "I feel sorry for the ones dying out there. Most of them are just regular people who did not make the decisions that led to this. But I do not feel sorry enough to watch more humans die for species that never cared if we lived." Across human space, similar conversations were happening. The debate was fierce. Some humans argued for intervention on moral grounds. Others argued that allowing the Council to fall would create a power vacuum that would eventually threaten Earth. But most people remembered the wars, remembered the dead, remembered being treated as tools. The vote was called in Earth's unified government. Should humanity intervene to save the Council? The result was clear. 83% voted no. Humanity would defend its own borders, protect its own people, and let the galaxy handle its own problems. The advance continued. They moved through Council space like a plague, destroying everything in their path. They did not seek to conquer or occupy. They simply eliminated potential threats and took whatever resources they wanted. Planets that resisted were burned. Planets that surrendered were stripped of valuable materials and left to starve. Within 3 months, the controlled 40% of what used to be Council space. Species that had numbered in the trillions were reduced to scattered survivors hiding in the dark spaces between stars. The beautiful cities of the lumans were shattered crystal. The vast hive worlds of the chitters were silent tombs. In a bunker deep beneath the surface of Lumen Prime, a group of survivors huddled around a failing power generator. Among them was a young Lumen named who had been a student in one of maintenance classes. She had been the worst student, barely paying attention, treating the class as punishment for failing her art exams. Now she desperately tried to remember the lessons. How did the generator work? What did the humans say about maintaining it? She could not remember. She had not listened. Around her, the other lumens were dying slowly as their bodies failed without proper light frequency. They begged her to fix the generator. She did not know how. Thought about sending a message to Earth to specifically begging for help, but she knew it was pointless. Earth was not responding to anyone. The borders were closed. Humanity had walked away. As she sat in the darkness, listening to her people die, finally understood what the humans had been trying to tell them for 200 years. Respect is not something you buy. It is something you earn, and the Council had never earned humanity's respect. They had simply assumed it would always be there. They were not the only predators emerging from the shadows. Other species, seeing the Council's weakness, began their own campaigns of expansion. Border wars erupted across the galaxy. Species that had been peaceful for generations suddenly remembered old grievances. Without human mediators, every dispute became violence. The galaxy was consuming itself, and humanity watched from behind closed borders, their fleets ready to defend their own space but unwilling to step into the chaos beyond. Some humans felt guilt about this. Most did not. They remembered too clearly what the Council's gratitude was worth. Commander received a personal message from his old chitter colleague, a fleet officer named. They had fought together in 3 wars, had saved each other's lives more than once. The message was desperate. His home world was under attack. His family was trapped in a city that were surrounding. He begged to help, to do something, anything. Read the message 3 times. Then he deleted it without responding. He poured himself a drink and stood at his window, looking out at the Sol skyline. The city was bright and peaceful. Human space was safe, protected by fleets that no longer had to waste themselves defending species who saw them as servants. He raised his glass in a silent toast to his daughter and all the others who had died for the Council's wars. Then he turned off his communication terminal and went to bed. Outside his window, the stars shone peacefully. Somewhere beyond those stars, the galaxy was burning. But that was no longer humanity's problem. The advance continued, and humanity's silence remained absolute. 1 year after humanity's withdrawal, the Galactic Council existed only in name. The grand orbital station above Prime was abandoned, its halls empty and dark. The species that once met there to discuss the fate of the galaxy were now scattered, each one struggling to survive in their own corner of space. The Dominion controlled half of what used to be Council territory, but they were not the only threat anymore. Smaller predator species, emboldened by the Council's collapse, had begun their own campaigns. A reptilian species known for their cruelty swept through the outer systems. The torn, mechanical beings who viewed organic life as inefficient began converting entire worlds into factories. The galaxy had become a nightmare of violence and chaos, and through it all, humanity remained silent behind their borders. Ambassador Minu sat in his small apartment on the station, one of the last humans who had not returned to Earth. His Lumen wife had died 6 months ago when their section of the station lost power. He had tried to fix it using his basic knowledge of the systems, but he was a diplomat, not an engineer. He had failed her. Now he spent his days documenting the fall of the Council, writing a history that he knew might never be read. His latest entry described the desperate attempts by Council species to reach Earth. They had sent 50 delegations to human borders. All were turned away. Some were fired upon when they refused to leave. The Chitters tried sending gifts, offering their most valuable resources. The gifts were left floating in space, unclaimed. The Lumens sent artists to perform beautiful displays of light and music at the border, hopping to touch human hearts. Human patrol ships watched the performances in silence, then told them to leave. Nothing worked. Humanity would not even speak to them. A knock on Minu's door interrupted his writing. He opened it to find the former council chairman. The crystalline being's light was dim, barely visible. He looked ancient, broken. "May I come in?" asked. Minu stepped aside. They sat together in the small apartment, two relics from a dead era, looked around at the simple furniture, the basic amenities. "You chose to stay," he said. "Why?" "My wife was here," Minu replied. "By the time she died, the last transport to Earth had already left. They would have sent a ship for me, but I told them not to waste the resources." Crystals pulsed with what might have been sadness. "I have been reviewing the old records, the contracts, the agreements, the communications between Earth and the Council. I am trying to understand where it went wrong." And Minu asked. "We never saw you as equals," said quietly. "I am reading messages I personally sent to Earth representatives. The language is polite, but underneath it all, there is an assumption that humans exist to serve." He pulled up a holographic display showing an old message. "This one is from 40 years ago. I am thanking humanity for sending soldiers to fight the border conflict with the Empire. Listen to how I phrase it. Your troops performed admirably in their designated role, as if fighting our wars was humanity's natural purpose." Minu had heard this tone his entire career. He had learned to ignore it to focus on the work. But now, hearing finally recognize it, he felt a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. "We tried to tell you," Minu said. "For decades, human ambassadors raised concerns about how we were treated. We asked for equal representation in council decisions. We asked to be consulted before wars were declared in our name. We asked for basic respect." "And we gave you medals," said bitterly. "We gave you ceremonies and titles and compensation. We thought that was enough. We thought you would be satisfied with being well-paid servants." A communication alert chimed, checked it, and his light flickered with despair. "They have taken the home world. The species is now functionally extinct. 300 billion beings gone." They sat in silence for a moment, then asked the question that haunted him. Will they ever forgive us? Will humanity ever come back? Minu stood and walked to the window. Outside, he could see empty docking bays where council ships used to gather. "I do not speak for Earth anymore," he said, "but I can tell you what I think. Forgiveness is not the issue. The issue is trust." "Trust can be rebuilt," said. "Can it?" Minu turned to face him. "For 200 years, humanity trusted the Council. We trusted you to treat us fairly. We trusted you to value our lives as much as your own. We trusted you to stand beside us when we fought your wars. That trust was broken, not once but continuously, every single day for 2 centuries. He gestured at the display showing casualty reports from across the galaxy. Now you come asking for help because you are dying. But where were you when we were dying? Where was the council when the void swarm burned our colonies? You sent flowers and thoughts and standard-rate compensation. You did not send ships. You did not send soldiers. You did not send anything that cost you real sacrifice. Light dimmed further. We made a mistake. No, Minyu said firmly. A mistake is something you do once and learn from. What you did was systematic. It was a choice, made over and over again, to value human lives less than your own. And now you are surprised that we will not die for you anymore. On Earth, the government received a different kind of message. Not pleas for help, but offers of complete surrender. The Chitters offered to make Earth the capital of their empire. The Lumans offered to give humanity control of all their remaining resources. Or what was left of them, offered to become a client state under human protection. Each offer was carefully worded, legally binding and desperate. They were offering everything they had once refused to give: equality, partnership, real power in galactic decisions, everything humanity had asked for 200 years ago. The response from Earth was simple and consistent: no. In a government building in Geneva, officials debated the offers. Some argued that accepting would give humanity control of vast resources, would make them the dominant power in the galaxy. Others argued that saving the council species was a moral obligation, that watching them die was cruel. But the majority held firm. We are not interested in ruling them, the Prime Minister said during a broadcast. We are not interested in saving them. We are not interested in punishing them. We are simply no longer interested in them at all. It was a harsh truth, but it was the truth. Humanity had moved on. The galaxy had been their focus for 2 centuries, and where had it gotten them? Billions dead, economies destroyed, generations lost to wars that benefited everyone except humans. Now humanity was focused inward. They were rebuilding their colonies. They were healing their trauma. They were creating art and science and culture for themselves, not for species who would take it for granted. They were learning to exist without the burden of everyone else's problems. A historian published her research about the Council era. Her work became mandatory reading in schools across human space. In it, she wrote, "We were not their protectors. We were their crutch. And when you remove a crutch from someone who never learned to walk, they fall. This is not cruelty. This is nature." The book was controversial. Some called it heartless. Others called it necessary truth. But everyone read it, and everyone understood the message. Humanity had spent 2 centuries holding up a civilization that could not stand on its own. Now that civilization was collapsing, and humanity was watching it happen with clear eyes. Refugees began appearing at human borders. Not delegations or ambassadors, but regular people fleeing the violence. Families with children, elderly beings who had lost everything. They came in small ships, in escape pods, in anything that could cross space. Human border stations turned them away, not with violence but with firm finality. Human space is closed. You cannot enter. Some of the refugees begged. Some offered to work, to serve, to do anything for sanctuary. The answer was always the same: turn back. On the border station Zeta, Captain Sura watched a small Chitter family ship drift away after being entry. She could see through their viewports, see the children inside. Her second officer, a young man named, stood beside her. "That ship will not make it to the next system," said quietly. "They will run out of fuel in 2 days." "I know," Sura replied. "We could let them in, just one family. What harm could it do?" Sura turned to face him. "And when word spreads that we let one family in, what happens? 10 more ships arrive tomorrow, 100 the day after, 1,000 the week after that. Where does it end?" "But they are innocent," protested. "They did not make the decisions that led to this. Neither did the 70 million humans who died in the Void Swarm War," Sura said. Neither did the 400 billion civilians we evacuated from burning colonies. Innocent people die in every tragedy. That does not make it our responsibility to save them. She walked away from the viewport, unable to watch the family ship disappear into the darkness. In her quarters, she allowed herself a moment of grief, not for the Council, but for the galaxy itself, for what it could have been if only the species within it had learned to treat each other with basic dignity and respect. That night Minu made his final entry in his history. The Council fell not because humans were cruel, but because humans were finally honest. They said no. And in that simple word, 200 years of exploitation ended. The galaxy is burning, humanity watches, and history will argue forever about whether this was justice or tragedy. Perhaps it was both. 3 years had passed since humanity walked away. The galaxy was unrecognizable. Where once thousands of species had lived in relative peace, now only the strong survived. The Dominion controlled vast territories, their fleets patrolling space that used to belong to the Council. Other predator species had carved out their own domains, fighting among themselves for the scraps. The species that had made up the Galactic Council were nearly extinct. The chitters, who once numbered in the trillions, had perhaps a few billion survivors scattered across hidden colonies. The lumens were functionally gone, their beautiful crystal cities shattered into dust. They existed only as small groups hiding in deep space, afraid to broadcast their location. Of all the Council species, only one had managed something resembling survival. A species that humanity had always respected because they actually tried to learn and do things for themselves. They had lost territory and population, but they had adapted. They built defenses using the manuals humans had left behind. They trained soldiers using human tactical doctrine. They survived not because humans saved them, but because they saved themselves. On a cold morning in March, a single small shuttle appeared at the edge of human space. It carried no weapons, no cargo, just one passenger. The border station sensors detected it immediately, and Captain Sura was called to the command center. "Identification," she asked. "It is broadcasting as a diplomatic vessel," her officer replied. "Single occupant, chitter designation." Sura sighed. They still came sometimes, though much less frequently than before. "Standard protocol, tell them to turn back." "Actually," the officer said, "they are not asking for entry. They are requesting to speak with you specifically, by name." That was unusual. Sura checked the identification codes and felt a cold shock. She knew this ship. Let them communicate audio only. The channel opened. An old, tired voice spoke. "Captain Sura, my name is. I believe we met once, many years ago, during the treaty negotiations on Prime." Sura remembered, had been one of the few council members who treated humans with genuine respect, who actually listened when they spoke. "I remember you, Elder. What do you want?" "Only to talk," said. "I do not ask for entry into human space. I do not ask for aid. I ask only for a conversation. I am dying and I wish to understand something before I go." Sura considered this. It was against protocol, but had always been different from the others. Permission granted to dock. You may come aboard the station, but you will not be allowed beyond the docking area. The shuttle docked an hour later. Emerged slowly, his body clearly aged and damaged. 2 of his 6 arms were missing, lost in some battle. His compound eyes were dim. Sura met him in the docking bay with armed guards present. They sat in a simple observation room overlooking the stars, looked out at space for a long time before speaking. "I am the last of the council leadership," he said. "Died 6 months ago when they found his hiding place. The others are gone too. I am the last one who remembers how it used to be." "Why are you here?" Sura asked directly. "I need to understand," said. "Why? Why did you leave us? Why did you let it all fall apart? I have spent 3 years trying to understand, and I cannot." Sura looked at the old being before her. She could have been cruel. She could have listed all the injustices, all the insults, all the deaths. but had never been the problem. He had tried in his own way to make things better. "Do you remember the Void Swarm War?" she asked. "Of course," replied. "Humanity saved us all." "Humanity lost 70 million soldiers in that war," Sura said. "Do you know how many non-human council members fought in that war?" Was silent. "None," Sura continued. "Not one. The council sent thoughts and prayers. The council sent medals and compensation. But when humans died by the millions, no other species sent soldiers to fight beside them. And after the war, when we asked for help rebuilding our colonies, we were told it was not in the contract." "I argued for aid," said quietly. "I was outvoted." "I know," Sura said, and her voice softened slightly. "You were one of the few who tried, but one voice was not enough. The Council had 200 years to treat humanity as equals, 200 years to stand beside us instead of behind us, 200 years to value our lives as much as their own." She stood and walked to the window. "You want to know why we left? Because we finally realized the truth. We were not partners in the Council. We were tools. Useful tools, valued tools, but tools nonetheless. And when a tool realizes it is a tool, it has two choices: accept it or walk away." "So you let billions die out of pride?" asked. Sura turned to face him, her eyes hard. "We are not killing anyone. We are simply not saving them anymore. There is a difference." "The result is the same," said. "Is it?" Sura crossed her arms. "If I see a man drowning and I choose not to jump in to save him, am I responsible for his death? What if I have already saved that man 100 times before, and each time he jumped right back into the water? What if saving him meant putting my own children at risk? At what point does his death become his own responsibility?" Had no answer to that. "You are dying," Sura continued, "because your civilization built itself on a foundation of human sacrifice. You did not train your own soldiers because humans would do it. You did not maintain your own systems because humans would do it. You did not solve your own problems because humans would do it. You became dependent on us, and you never even noticed." "We noticed too late," admitted. "When you left, we tried to do things ourselves. We tried to fight to maintain the systems, to solve the problems. We failed." "Because you had 200 years to learn and you did not," Sura said. "You had 200 years to prepare for the possibility that we might one day say no. You chose to believe we never would." They sat in silence for a while. Outside the window, stars shone peacefully. Somewhere beyond those stars, the galaxy was still burning. But here in human space, there was peace. "Will you ever come back?" asked finally. Sura thought about that question carefully. "I do not know. That decision is above my rank, but I can tell you what I think. If humanity ever does return to the galaxy, it will not be as your soldiers or your engineers or your problem solvers. It will be as equals or not at all. And if we promised equality now, if the survivors agreed to real partnership, to shared sacrifice, to treating humans with the respect you deserve." "Now," Sura shook her head, "now those promises mean nothing. You offer us equality because you are desperate, not because you believe we deserve it. True respect is not something you offer when you have no other choice. It is something you give freely when you have all the power." His body seemed to slump. "Then we are truly lost." "Your species is not extinct," Sura said. "There are billions of chitters still alive, scattered across dozens of colonies. They have proven that survival is possible for those willing to adapt and learn. Your people could survive if they choose to. Without human protection, against the... They are doing it," Sura pointed out. "They studied the manuals we left. They trained their own soldiers. They built their own defenses. They are not thriving, but they are surviving. They are learning to stand on their own." "They always respected humanity," said. "We did not, and now we pay the price." Sura walked him back to his shuttle. At the airlock, paused. "I am sorry," he said. "For what it is worth, I am sorry for how we treated you. I wish I had fought harder to change it." "I believe you," Sura said. But sorry does not bring back the dead. Sorry does not rebuild burned colonies. Sorry is just a word. Nodded slowly. What will you tell your people about this conversation? The truth, Sura replied, that one of the last council leaders came to understand why we left, that he was sorry, that it changed nothing. The shuttle departed, disappearing into the darkness. Sura stood at the window watching it go. Her second officer joined her. Do you think we made the right choice? He asked, letting it all fall apart. Sura was quiet for a long moment. I think we made the only choice we could make while still respecting ourselves. They had 2 centuries to change. They did not. We had every right to walk away. But billions died, said. And billions of humans died in their wars, Sura replied. The difference is that we chose to die for them. They never chose to die for us. When that choice became clear, when we finally understood that we were valued only for our usefulness, we stopped making that sacrifice. She turned away from the window. History will judge us. Some will call us cruel. Some will call us just. Some will say we should have stayed and continued to sacrifice ourselves for species who did not appreciate it. But I know one thing with certainty. What? Asked. My children will grow up in a humanity that values itself, Sura said. They will never be taught that their lives are worth less than others. They will never be expected to die for species that see them as tools. Whatever else happens, whatever the galaxy becomes, humanity will remember its own worth. In the years that followed, the galaxy slowly stabilized. The stopped expanding, having taken all the easily conquered territory. Then a few other species formed a new alliance, built on principles of mutual respect and shared sacrifice. They survived not because they were powerful, but because they learned to work together as true equals. The council species that had refused to adapt disappeared into history. The beautiful cities of the lumans became ruins that explorers would study centuries later. The vast hive worlds of the chitters fell silent, monuments to a species that had once numbered in the trillions. And humanity remained behind their borders, watching the galaxy but not participating in it. They built their own civilization, strong and self-sufficient. They remembered the lessons learned in blood. They taught their children about the council era, about the price of being valued only for usefulness, about the importance of respecting yourself enough to walk away from those who do not respect you. Somewhere in the archives, Minu's history was preserved. Its final words were read by every human child. The Galactic Council fell because it forgot a simple truth. Civilization cannot be built on the backs of people you do not respect. And when those people finally stand up and walk away, you cannot blame them for your collapse. You can only blame yourself for never learning to stand. The galaxy paid the price, and humanity in their silence had taught a lesson that would echo through the stars for generations to come. Respect costs nothing, but its absence costs everything.